Hi guys, so just want to go through the assessment and just give you a bit more guidance around it, especially for those of you that have missed the assessment tutorials. So assessment 3 is an individual case study. It's worth 40%, so it's really important that you know exactly what you need to do for it. So as you can see, this is the assessment description, and it's on Moodle. It's also what I handed out in class. So the overview is that you're taking on a role, and you can choose which role you want to take. You pick one of the 4 options and then you complete the assessment about it. It's all about looking at the health and fitness needs of your clients. It's about looking at their current status and then looking at factors that might be contributing to their current health and fitness state, and looking at what their goals are and some recommendations for them achieving their goals. So this is due, the draft is due the first day back from the break. It doesn't have to be fully completed, but it has to be 90% completed then, which is why it's important that you get onto it now. The final report is due at the end of the first week back. That is assuming that you were there on the Monday. If you're not there on the Monday, unfortunately, you will not have the additional time to submit it. So if you're not there on the Monday, then it is due and turn it in on the Monday. If you're in class on the Monday, you get an extension until the Friday. So coming up to the task, there's 4 major tasks, and as you can see on my screen, the first task is what we always generally start with. You've got to know what you're dealing with. You've got to do a bit of a needs analysis to understand the people that you're working with. So task A is just that. You need to choose one of the case studies to base this assessment on. Now the case studies are on Moodle, and there is 4 options. You can choose to take the case of the assistant rugby coach, as if you are coaching Kelston Girls High School second 15 rugby team. You can choose to be a health and wellness advocate, so where you're looking at sort of more public general health and wellness. You can look at case C, which is a fitness instructor, and you are running a 12-week challenge, kind of based around losing weight and increasing general fitness. Or you can go with more of a community role, like a whānau ora kairahi. So that's like someone who works in the community and works with families, and tries to just help with their general health and well-being. So you are whānau ora kairahi, working particularly with Māori families in Henderson. So they are your 4 options. They're all quite different, but hopefully within there is something that is appealing to you, one of those roles. The first thing you need to do is to choose one of those roles to do this task A about. So once you've chosen one of the roles, you need to read through the description I've given of it. You need to do a little bit of your own research about what that kind of a role would involve, and then look at what your own understanding is of the context as well. Maybe you have experience in this area already that you can bring to the table. And then the key word here is that you must outline a profile of the people that you are typically dealing with. So basically, you need to provide me with an outline of who are these people? Who are the clients you're working with? If you're working with rugby girls from Kelston, what are kind of some key characteristics of them? If you're working with Māori families in Henderson, who are these people? What are some characteristics? I've given you 3 guiding questions to help you. So you need to be able to answer really, who are these clients? What are their key characteristics? And that might be characteristics to do with their nutrition or their physical activity or their lifestyle or their habits or whatever. And you can get that information partly from the profile I've written, but you're going to have to actually utilize your own kind of research skills to find this information as well. You might have to talk to people that work in this area. You might have to do a bit of finding some stats, for instance, about Māori families. What are some common characteristics of Māori families in Auckland? You'll need to identify what their health and fitness needs and goals are. So what are their goals? Then what also are their needs? And that might not be stated in the profile that I've given you, but you'll need to kind of come up with your own ideas of these health and fitness needs and goals. Now, I don't mind if you kind of create your own assumptions or some of your own details around these profiles. The profiles I've given you are quite minimal, but you can add in some detail if you want. As long as it is realistic for that particular profile, I'm fine with that. So 200 words, but by the time I read that 200 words of yours, I should have a pretty good idea of the type of clients that you are working with within the role that you have chosen. So the next task is the task B, which is contributing factors. So you need to identify 5 factors and write 100 to 120 words about each. Now, these factors can be one of two things. They can be factors of things that are currently contributing to your client's health and fitness state. So let's have a look. If you look at the cases, you might go, okay, I'm going to look at a health and wellness advocate at Unitec. So what do you think are some factors that are contributing at the moment to the health and wellness of staff at Unitec? You might be able to pick that up from my profile that I've written here, or you might actually have to do a bit of research and ask around and try to get this information yourself. Or if you are being a fitness instructor, what are some key characteristics of the individuals in your group that might impact on their health and fitness state? So what can you see within this profile that might either positively or negatively impact on their health and fitness state? Again, you can add in some additional details of you reading between the lines if you like. That is totally fine, because the profiles I've given are quite narrow and they're quite brief. The other option is that you can find factors of things that your client actually needs to work on to achieve their health and fitness goals. So you might look at the whānau ora kairahi. So you're working with Māori families. What are some factors of things that they might need to actually address to help them achieve their health and fitness goals? So they're wanting to improve their general health and also minimize their health risk factors for things like obesity and high blood pressure and physical inactivity. So what are some key factors that might help them address those particular goals, or that might help them achieve those particular goals better? So you just need 5 in total, okay? So it's 5 of these or 5 of these, or a combination of both. It is up to you. But at the end of the day, I only want 5, not 10, 5, okay? And remember, you must have a range of topics that you address. You might address something to do with nutrition. You might address something to do with physical activity or to do with psychology. It's entirely up to you what 5 factors you talk about. A key factor here is that you must use theory to justify that contributing factor. So if you're saying that this person is not exercising enough, they need to train more times a week, you need to find some evidence that supports that comment that you've made. So what kind of evidence do you have to say that they should be training more than what they're currently training? Or if you're making a nutritional recommendation, or you're kind of saying, hey, this part of their diet actually isn't very good, you need to have evidence to back that up, that supports the claim that you're making, and you must provide a reference for it, and it must be from a reputable source. Okay, if you look at the next video that I'm about to make, you'll be able to see actually some ideas of where to get some credible information from. Okay, this is really important, because if your information is not from a good source, you will be marked down. So each factor must be linked to theory. Task C, so once you've finished that, is now you look at the individual case within your role profile that you've been given. So if you're doing the fitness instructor, you can see down the bottom it says individual case, and this person is Luke. And you've got to answer a few questions about Luke. And as you can see here, there's 3 things. The first thing is you need to identify and explain which energy systems and components of fitness are required and to what degree for that particular physical activity that they're involved in. Okay, so if you look at this, Luke, he's wanting to tone up and he wants to get in shape to help him with his paddleboarding. So you need to know about paddleboarding, and you need to identify what energy systems and components of fitness are required for paddleboarding. You need to create a goal plan for him, and then you also need to answer this particular question here, the dilemma, using some theory. Okay, so just carrying on from my last video, we talked up to task C. So task C being based around the individual case within each profile, which you can find at the bottom of each of the cases. So if you're doing the whānau ora kairahi, your case is the pōpata family. If you're doing the fitness instructor, your case is Luke. And if you are doing the health and wellness advocate, your case is Danny. And the rugby coach, your case is Lupe. So the dilemma, I just want to quickly touch on that. The dilemma is I've tried to pick common dilemmas that people often kind of think. And sometimes they're accurate and sometimes they're not. And it's up to you to figure out whether their dilemma is accurate or not. So you need to describe why you think they're thinking that way. And then you need to use theory to justify whether you think it's right or wrong. So let's have a look at the assistant rugby coach. So Lupe, her dilemma, and if you can see it down the bottom, she's worried that next year when she finishes all her school sport, all her muscle will turn to fat and she'll become overweight. That's a really common dilemma. So you need to work out and describe, why do you think she's thinking that? And then you need to describe what's actually accurate and not accurate. So is it true that all her muscles going to turn to fat when she stops playing her sport, and will she become overweight? You're going to have to do a little bit of research on that and come up with a brief description of that dilemma and whether you think it is right or wrong. And you must use a reference again, okay? So you've got to find some reputable, some credible, some legit evidence to support whatever you say there. Now, I'm not looking for screeds, so have a look. It's only a 250 word count for this whole section. So you don't have to write masses, but what you write has got to be accurate. So don't waffle, get straight to the point and use good information. Lastly, is the recommendation section. So you should be pretty used to this by now. It's the same as what you did with your individual or your group case studies. You need to pick 3 recommendations for your client group. So one has got to be related to physical activity, and you have to include actual suggested method for achieving that recommendation. So don't just write, oh, they need to eat healthier, or they need to do more activity. Or how can they do that? What do you recommend they do? Again, I'm not looking for really specifics of numbers of reps or exact numbers of nutrients. We don't have to go into that level of detail, but you have to give some detail and some suggested methods of actually how they can do it. So find that balance of being specific, but not very nitpicky down to the really fine details. So pretty similar to what you have been doing anyway in your group case studies. You need to do 3, and they only need to be short. Okay, but they have to link to what you've already talked about in section A, B, and C. And you have to justify that recommendation. If you are telling them that they need to eat a certain type of food, or they need to change a certain aspect of their lifestyle, then you need to provide a justification for that. That is the key difference between this assessment and the group assessments, is that I'm looking for more depth here. I'm looking for whatever you talk about to be backed up by evidence. And that is that.